Welcome to Incredible Idaho. I'm Wayne Walker. This August we took a 5-day trip down Idaho's premier wilderness river, the Middle Fork of the Salmon. Now, as luck would have it, we chose the tail end of the floating season in the lowest water year in recent memory. And as you might have guessed, we bounced our boats off lots of rocks. But despite the conditions, we came away from the experience marveling at the wonderful treasure we have right here in our own backyard.
In 1964, after 9 years of squabbling, President Johnson signed into law a profound piece of legislation called the Wilderness Act. Eventually, 96 million acres of our nation's wild lands would be permanently protected in their natural state. The largest of these in the lower 48 is the Frank Church River of No Return Wilderness, 2.4 million acres of rugged territory spilling across the mountains of central Idaho and encompassing the entire Middle Fork of the Salmon River. Our first look is from the perspective of an eagle, skimming 10,000 feet above the wilderness area, eerily shrouded in smoke from neighboring wildfires. Down below there somewhere is a tiny dirt landing strip squeezed between the mountain walls. Our pilot banks into a hairpin turn, slowly bleeding off altitude as he maneuvers the plane into the narrow canyon. Why do they call it a wing and a prayer? Finally, the dirt strip looms straight ahead and we landed with a gentle bump. It's already an adventure. We've come into Thomas Creek, the jump-off point for floaters when the river is really low. Like many of the landmarks along the Middle Fork, Thomas Creek is named for a miner who homesteaded here in the late 1880s. But it was a fellow named James Voller who actually registered a legitimate claim in 1911. He built this small log cabin, grew alfalfa, and kept livestock. A few years later, in poor health, he sold his claim to cattlemen. Ranching proved unprofitable in the Middle Fork's remote, tough climate, and the property changed hands several times until eventually it was built up into a hunting and fishing lodge. Finally, in 1966, Bill Harrah of Harrah's in Reno and Lake Tahoe bought the place, and for a time, the Middle Fork Lodge became a guest ranch, catering to entertainers and celebrities. Here in this remote outpost, guests could relax in the lodge, swim in a pool warmed by natural hot springs, or hike the surrounding mountains. But the best part was the salmon fishing. Each summer, big Chinook salmon traveled up the Middle Fork on the last leg of their 900-mile journey from the ocean. It was an angler's paradise. But today, that paradise is gone. Hydropower dams have destroyed the historic runs. Now, pristine salmon spawning habitat lies empty, and research biologists count the returning fish one by one, rather than by the thousands.
1-0. So far this year, we've passed 6 adults over the weir at Marsh Creek. Last year, we had passed, I think, 15 or 16 at the same time.
Marsh Creek is a tributary of the Middle Fork, and on this bright summer day, biologists are counting the tiny salmon that have emerged from last summer's spawning. In this manner, researchers get an estimate of the survival rate from eggs to juvenile fish like this, called par. Next spring, these little guys will head to the ocean, but only 1 out of 5 will survive the dams and the slack water reservoirs they create. A legacy lost. No longer can we experience the thrill of fishing for big salmon on the Middle Fork, but we do hope to catch another Idaho native, the cutthroat trout. It is a catch and release only river, and the men we're floating with are here to ensure that no one forgets that regulation. We're along on an enforcement patrol, and our boatmen are conservation officers with the Idaho Department of Fish and Game.
Yeah, with as many floaters as people are using this corridor, 10,000 a year, the cutthroat fishery being catch and release, we have to enforce that regulation, and if we allowed a keep season down here, there wouldn't be any cutthroat to fish for. And I think most of the people coming down here just enjoy being able to catch a few fish and release them and have a good time.
We're with Idaho Fish Game. Are you familiar with the rules and regulations concerning the Middle Fork?
Well, we're barbless hook,
right?
Catch and release.
Okay.
This angler is from the state of Maine. He's purchased a 3-day non-resident license and is thoroughly enjoying his first experience fishing in the West.
Well, the main attraction, I think, is that it's in a wilderness area. The only way to really get in here is by floating down the river, fishing that way, or coming in on horseback. A few airstrips in the area that people come in on. Pristine water quality, that's what cutthroat require, and it's just a beautiful area.
Clay Cummins has been a conservation officer with Idaho Fish and Game for 10 years. His job is to protect the resource from the folks who are inclined to take more than their share.
A few people, the majority of people, just like most places around the state, abide by the rules and regulations, but there's always those few that got to push it, and it's our job to keep them honest and take action when necessary.
Recently, the Bonneville Power Administration has funded a special tri-state team of enforcement officers who are charged with the responsibility to protect what few salmon remain from any kind of unlawful harvest. Idaho Fish and Game Officer John Hagan is part of that team.
How's it going? You guys catch any fish today?
That's pretty spotty.
Yeah. I'm with Idaho Fish and Game. Just doing routine angler checks. Individually, it's hard to say if an enforcement officer is making an impact. There's no tangible way of recording or documenting anything unless, you know, you write a ticket or you seize an animal and you can say, yeah, I did something. But there's more to enforcement than just writing tickets. Our presence on the water, we don't know what the effect that is on an as far as a deterrent goes. As far as personally, I think I'm doing something. I sure enjoy it.